Say again. So the icons show me whether we can stream or not.
Okay, we can call to order the February 9th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting. And I have a roll call.
Commissioner Lawson.
Present.
Commissioner Rapp.
Yes.
Commissioner Root. Commissioner Seaman.
Here.
Commissioner Kodo.
Here.
Commissioner James.
Here.
Forgot somebody. Commissioner Archibald. Sorry.
And we need a motion to add Kelly Root via
Yep.
speaker.
So moved. Second.
Okay.
We need a roll.
Just a voice vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alright, so for whatever reason, she's not there, so let me call her back. Hey, Colleen, I'm not sure why we lost you, but we're just there we go. There we go.
because of scheduling challenges for Jim Parker, we'd like to hear from, and those will be before communications. And then I would like to ask, as a bold request from the board, if we can, out of respect for our visitors who will be to 3 minutes, if we could limit ourselves to 3 minutes as well. Just in the interest of moving things along and just honoring what we asked the other folks to do. So,
Here.
okay. So comments from the Archibald and Jim Parker are the additions or changes. If you'd like to go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. At the last board
Excuse
meeting,
me, Madam Chairman,
Yes,
Madam Chairman,
yes,
I have an addition also,
Oh.
if I may.
yes.
And that is, President James appeared before Village Council with you on Tuesday, January 31st. He made a recommendation that Village investigate something called park zoning. That has not been discussed before this board, and I would very much like to have a summary of his thoughts on that tonight, if that is possible. Thank you.
Can you just clarify again? Investigate something called what?
zoning.
Park zoning. Perfect.
Park zoning.
Thank you.
It was his recommendation to the village on Tuesday, January 31st. Thank you.
I would just clarify, that wasn't a recommendation, it was an observation, and I will comment on it at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Okay. So we start with comments from the Archibald.
Sure. At the last board meeting, I chose an inappropriate word during my comments. For anyone in the room that was offended by that word, I wish to apologize. And I will work to be more careful with my choice of words going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan?
Thank you, Commissioner Coto. A few items I'd like to touch on very quickly. The first is the overdue Cook County property tax payments. As of February 8th, Cook County has paid $2,359,596 of the $2,425,306 owed. Remaining balance is $65,764. We are expecting that within the next 2 weeks, so we're almost up to date with what was owed to us.
Nice.
The second update, the Employee Retention Credit Program. We are on track to receive this $575,000 payment prior to the end of the first quarter. So within the next 6 weeks, we should be receiving that money. Third item I'd like to touch on. About this time last year, I worked with Commissioner Seaman to term out some of our operating reserves into some short-term CDs. Those CDs are starting to mature. We are in a good position right now, so we're going to roll those CDs over for another short term to generate more interest for the park district.
Is your plan to stagger those maturities?
Yes,
Excellent.
yes. So the first one will be 6 months, the next one will be 9 months, the next one will be 12 months. And the rates right now are somewhere between 4.9% and 4.9%.
We may not need to quote unquote term them out. Because 1 month, 3 month, that's kind of the peak in the curve. So the PDAF or whatever fund, that's got a really attractive rate. So
Yes.
keep that in mind. You may not need to term out for 3 or 6 months. You can just keep it in that same day liquidity fund.
I will keep that in mind. Thank you.
Yeah. If you want any opinions on short-term rates, feel free to call us. We just watch this stuff all day.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a question for you. Has Cook County given you any guidance on what their full year plan is? If they're going to be able to do 3 payments this year, or if they're going to be consistently rolling?
I have not seen anything that states they will delay the 2022 and collection 2023. So as far as I know at this point, it's still planning back to business as usual.
Okay.
There will be a slight delay in the first payment of this year because they're not collecting it until April rather than March.
Right.
But I'm still expecting 2 payments this year.
In addition to this.
In addition to the, yes, the ones we've been receiving over the past 5 weeks. Our 2022 audit is off to a smooth start. They're upgraded their online portal this year. So many of the requested documents are going to be able to upload, which will streamline the process. But so far, the preliminary meeting went very well. So things are going possibility of refunding both the 2011 debt certificates and the 2014 bonds has presented itself to the Winnetka Park District. I'll be reaching out to Piper Sandler to research this a little further. Both can be refunded at tax exempt rates. The debt certificates for 2011 can be refunded at any time since the past call date. The 2014 bonds can be refunded at tax exempt rates within 90 days of the December 1st, 2023 call date. So as early as September, you could refund those. Preliminary estimates based on current market conditions indicate the gross debt service savings to the Park District could be up to $357,000.
Is it over the life of the instruments?
Yes, yes, and the present value savings right now would be about $293,000, roughly 4.9% refund. So I'll be researching that further. I'll report more on that at the next meeting.
Again, watch it every day. Feel free to call me. I'm reluctant to issue at these rates.
Right, but refunding would probably,
Yeah.
at least this, right now, looks like it might be a good thing.
Yeah,
That's all I have.
all right, thank you very much. Okay, so now we have communications.
Yep, so your packet includes some articles, or recent articles, that we were able to add to the packet at the time that we were putting the packet together. 2 additional articles have come in. So each of you have a copy of the Winnetka jurisdiction article from the Record, and then also a article that was in this morning's Chicago Tribune by Alex Balchik, with discussion around, again, the village code and its extension into the lake, if you will. So those 2 articles reference the Park District, so I wanted to make sure everybody received that. Colleen, I'll make sure you get a copy of those 2 articles as well. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving to remarks from visitors. Remarks from visitors is your opportunity to address the board regarding any issue when called upon. Come to the center position in front of the commissioners. State your name for the record, speak directly to the board. Please keep all comments to 3 minutes. Not a question and answer. Please don't expect a response. If you prefer to share your comments in writing, you may use the comment cards, which are available near the sign-in sheets, and any Park District staff will accept your card to be shared with the board. Raise your hand if you'd like to speak. I'll call you starting in front.
Good evening. So at the last meeting, I asked if there was a large donation of millions to the Park District or to purchase the property on Sheridan Road. And I felt, I have to tell you, I felt a little bit dismissed that that was not an issue. But this was mentioned to a resident at the Park District workshop, and I'm trying to better understand it. So my questions are, has there been an offer or any indication of interest? Or is the Park District or its council aware of any form of an offer from someone to purchase 261 or donate it to the Park District? One could presume it would be about 261 Sheridan. And if it is, do we know if Orchard 2020, the owner of this, has responded? And has the Park District followed up on any form of offer that they or any other public body has had in Winnetka that they're aware of? And if so, when will you let the public know?
I have to stand up. It's like being in school or something. Hi, Tony Chango. Okay, so I couldn't make it last time. Drove like crazy. So I wanted to comment on 2 things. First, this whole policy about speaking to the press. Fascinating. I thought that the current one is certainly much better, but honestly, it all seems sort of meaningless because there's no bite in it. And I agree. There should be civility. I'm going to get to this in a second. There should be civility among all of this. I don't know what the apology was about. But anyway, so there should be civility, and I do think that the board should, act as a unit, and I do think that the members should be supportive of board decisions and all that stuff. But at the same time, you don't expect, who should I pick? Paul Ryan to, you know, not say what he feels regardless of what the vote is. And I think that, you know, people are gonna talk. And so I think it's a hard thing. I do feel that the board should work with the union, and I do think the board members should be supportive. But at the same time, you know, they're individuals that are elected to office, they're individuals elected to office. And, you know, I make the policy, I think the intent of the policy is a nice idea, but it sort of seems meaningless and people just need to be more civil. Which brings me to my next thing. Okay, so I think that this whole thing about the land swap, people keep forgetting how it all started, right? My understanding is that the Park District had an agreement with the prior owner to purchase that land, okay? And that was for $5 million, they were gonna get it, combine the parts. And along comes another individual and offers $6.2 million for that same parcel, and of course the seller says, I'd rather take 6.2 than 5. And then all this starts about swapping land and requirements and all this stuff. I don't find that as being very civil, okay? That really strikes me as an individual seeking to distort the public interest for their own private gain. And I'm sorry, it's just my opinion. You know, as far as I'm concerned at this point, it's just a real estate negotiation. You know, it's just a real estate contract. There's no earnest money. Park District should just walk away from this. We should just say, done. That individual or that entity can choose to do what they want with their property. Yeah, I don't think you should be giving up any of the Park District land for it. And, you know, if they want to take you to court, they have that right. They can sue to enforce the agreement. I would be fascinated by what the community would think about things in that situation. So I think it's all about being civil, and I do feel like a lot of this started because of a lack of civility on the part of individuals, not of the Park District or currently in the community.
Nicely done.
What?
And nicely done.
3 minutes on the notes.
Right.
Oh,
Exactly.
yeah, I try to be
Thank you. Nicely done. Would anyone else like to speak? Okay. We're going on now to new business.
We have any, do we have any new business, Krista? No? Kyle? No? We're good?
We have unfinished business.
Yep, so the second draft of the media policy is in the packet, and again, it's just a draft. Taking Commissioner Root's two examples, I think from Oak Park and from Glenview respectively, I essentially cobbled together draft 2. I also received a bit of input from Commissioner Rapp, so by no means is it a finished product. Certainly wide open to commissioners continuing to help edit the content. Not necessarily looking for that to happen tonight, although I'm certainly open to comments tonight. But I'll send you a Word document if you want to mark it up. Anything you want to do to help us get to a final policy language, if you will. So that's it.
That'll be for a vote next.
If we get to the final edits, if you will, so the input from the commissioners.
A Word doc would be much appreciated.
Yep, okay, I'll send out a Word doc to everybody.
I just have one observation on the current policy that I wanted to share, and I think that we need to consider as a board also in media policy, how we address public comments that board members may make in venues where the media are present. Particularly, you know, people are going and attending other meetings of other boards in Winnetka, and that is absolutely fantastic, and I absolutely support people's right to speak, but I think just a reminder of, you know, the media may be at those outlets. It is important to remember to express that you might be speaking as an individual unless you are speaking about a vote, you know, or a topic that the board has expressed a consolidated opinion on. And I just think as we consider the media policy, that is really important to consider further.
Got it.
Okay, so any other comments on the media policy? No, we're good. So thank you, Commissioner
Madam Chair,
Yes?
Commissioner Root here.
Yes.
May I speak, please?
Yes?
Okay, I find paragraph 5 to be, I guess I will support, Mr. Winnichenko's comment. The enforceability of this is going to be very difficult, but I find paragraph 5 to be extremely subjective. And so it asks that the board carefully look at that and consider that. It's going to be hard to have an objective standard on, whether someone is debating or not. And then I want to also reiterate Commissioner Rapp's comment. I was very impressed to hear you, Commissioner Cotto, and you, Commissioner James, at the village meeting on Tuesday, January 31st. But I did note that neither of you, when making those comments, stated that you were speaking in your individual capacity. So I think that's important for all of us to remember. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Okay. All right, thank you, Commissioner Bodo. So the update on the feedback from the workshop and open house is in the packet. There are additional comments that we received somewhere in the neighborhood, I think Kyle was 6, maybe 7, that came in after we had gone to, to print, for lack of a better term, to get this into the meeting package, so.
So that's actually 6.3, 6.2.
sorry.
Coastal
Sorry,
engineering.
jumped ahead. So,
Update on the selection.
So the coastal engineer.
Elderly and
I'm sorry about that.
Are you fine? Real quick, the process was delayed. Unfortunately, I wound up taking ill last week, and I was not in all week, and I wasn't able to further on as I had anticipated to the board. And at that point in time, I didn't think it was fair to rush that process and get it from the board to try to deliver it tonight. So that information will be coming next week, and then in preparation for the February 23rd meeting, so there can be enough time for the board to read, understand, review, and then address any comments either prior to or at the board meeting as needed. So I'd just like to apologize for my misstep. Unfortunately, it was out of my control.
Do you want people to respond to you via email and accelerate that conversation?
Yeah, once we'll release everything prior to the board meeting, of course, and if there's dialogue beforehand that we can expedite that process to address anything, that would be fantastic.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
I would like to add that we were finally able to get, and no disrespect to Costa, he was down for the count. But we did finally get on a Zoom call, and it was Costa, it was Scott Ferris from Coda, Matt Wright from Redmond, Thomas Burke from Christopher Burke Engineering, and myself. And it was a very constructive call, because Thomas Burke was monitoring the station regarding stormwater. He was able to provide the feedback he heard. Matt Wright was able to provide the feedback that he heard. And Scott was able to assimilate that, and there was a lot of good dialogue that will help focus the contract and make it a little more scope specific, so as not to be too wide ranging. So I thought it was a very constructive dialogue. Look forward to Costa taking it from there.
To further that one little bit further, we also will be preparing, or currently are preparing proposals from the Lakota Group as well as Christopher Burke Engineering as requested previously. So not only will it be the contract from Matt Wright, but the contract that will adjoin Matt Wright for the work to be done in totality. So we'll be looking at all 3 phases of the work for any consultants that are going to be participating as part of that project.
Now we'll do Susan.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
may I ask a question?
Yes?
Costa,
Yes?
may I ask a question of you? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, good, great. Do I understand correctly that Shabika and Associates are now going to be a subcontractor of Red Barn Engineering? Is that the intent?
The intent has always been for Shabik and Associates to be a subcontractor to Red Barn, and Red Barn to be the principal, in this case, the GC, if you will, for the project. So the intent was never that Shabika
as a was always to have them as a sub-consultant to the project.
With all due respect, I will direct you, our executive director, Mr. Peterson, and the board back to the transcript, minutes, and tape of our board meeting of October 27th, when the board instructed that staff would present 3 proposals, one from Lakota, one from Shabika, and then one from a neutral independent coastal engineer. Each of you has received my memorandum of yesterday with my concerns, and I don't need to belabor this further. I'm happy to talk to anyone about that. That memo is available for anyone who wants it. Thank you very much.
So I did receive the memo and had the opportunity to discuss it briefly. Actually, it came in last night. They did have the opportunity to forward it to Steve Adams and Adam Simon. Both of them have done a cursory review. They see nothing wrong with the proposal as set forth by Costa. And obviously, they will take the time to properly address that in the week ahead. But I'm confident in both councils' review.
And just ask one further question of staff. Executive Director Peterson, Mr. Phillips, why would your prime design consultant be a subcontractor now of your project manager engineer? That's something I don't understand. Can you explain that to me, please?
Can I interject? Sure. The prime design consultant is Lakota.
Forgive me for misspeaking. Why would your prime coastal consultant be now a subcontractor of a sole practitioner civil engineer?
So correct me if I'm wrong, Coach, so that same subcontractor was sought to be connected with Baird, if Baird were to have been selected, and I'm sure GZA, if GZA were to be selected, correct?
John Shabika did indicate that both firms, in addition to Red Barn, reached out to their firm to pair with them for the project. The reason that we are not getting an additional proposal, Colleen, at this point in time is because there would be a duplicate effort. The reason that once the request came in during the question and answer portion of the RFQ, it was asked, can Shabika submit with Red Barn being the primary? And after discussion with legal, it was suggested that it meets the qualifications of the intent of the RFQ. At this point, if we were to contract directly with Shabika, in addition to, I feel like we would just be wasting our efforts as far as dollars being allocated for no reason. The dollars are being allocated through Red Barn's contract, and they are now a sub-consultant of Red Barn, but still available to the Park District through the process.
Any other comments? Okay, we're gonna move to item number
6.3. So the feedback, so the feedback was provided by our third-party service provider, Vicarious Productions, and they were on site for the January 21st workshop open house. Since that point, we allowed comments to come in, not just during the workshop, but following the workshop until late afternoon, the 7th of February. We did receive approximately 6, 7 additional comments after we went to print for the agenda. So we'll add those 6 or 7 comments. The representative with whom we work, she's at an offsite conference, but she's committed to giving us an updated packet or presentation document by Monday of next week, and we'll make sure that that's available not only on our website, but to all the commissioners in our next EU packages to lock that down.
So one question, so you will add the additional comments to this document?
Yeah. Okay, got it. And we just ran into a situation, we had to be, live by 6 o'clock on Tuesday, so there's a point where we have to cut off. These came in afterwards. That's it.
Do we want to?
Just one question, for the meeting with the consultants and their feedback, could we see notes from those as well? Because I'd be interested, for example, from Thomas Burke to understand some of the questions that you responded to, or interested, Costa, I'm sure you got a lot of questions, and, if there are any themes, like, that would be wonderful information to share, either in a written summary, if you want to just talk, talk, whatever's easier, but I do
Sure.
feel like there was a lot of expertise and interaction with the consultants that would be good also to get some feedback on. Again,
So-
Thomas Burke as an example said, said, oh, I'm working on something to like look at the stormwater pipe
Sure.
exit more, and so
To that point, I have received some written communications back from the Lakota group, both Kevin Clark and Suraj, I think it's Suraj's last name, I apologize, who are in attendance running the workshop tables. They submitted that back, and I believe that was included.
Someone's in the packet.
So, yeah, that information as it's being delivered, we're getting that included and updated as well. And
Okay.
as far as staff's comments and concerns, comments and concerns, what we heard and, what we summarized from our intake from that meeting, we definitely put that in writing and submit that to the board as well.
Okay,
I'm
yeah,
just
it's
using
kinda
that as we
fielded
feed through,
a ton of
so.
questions too, I feel like, at that meeting, so.
I had a fair amount of clarification of what they were viewing. I would say the most substantive questions were happening in earlier stations.
Okay.
Would you be willing to footnote that, like consultant, Costa Catulas, Kyle Burr, just in case people had additional questions? I'd be curious to know who the question came to, and if I.
Do we want to have any, discussion of what we've read, synopsizing tonight, or explain to community at large what we're hearing?
Sure.
I think it's a very informative document, a lot of positive, a few negatives. I mean, the document speaks for itself. Great event, great event. I can tell you, I'm actually breaking my,
Go for
my
it.
comments, my interactions, yes, I had some negatives, but the conversations I had were overwhelmingly positive. I sent my comments, I think, to you, to John, and to Costa. It was a 10 out of 10. I think it was incredibly well run. The feedback was fantastic.
My 2 cents on it was, if you review it, again, nothing that was a surprise to me. People who have been opposed to this thing, with their comments as being opposed, and it was nice to see a lot more people who are in favor of it for their comments. So, I think the comments are very self-explanatory. You take with them. You take them after you want to take them.
I, from reading through the comments, feel that there's a great degree of urgency to move forward, especially with Elder. We have gone through a lot of input, and we have a very clear understanding dating back to October. And I do want to elaborate a little bit on some of the input from from Red Barn and Thomas Burke. And I think you'll see further refinement based upon their professional expertise to the design, the going, and the discharge of the storm sewer. And those two had a very interesting and constructive dialogue, and I think we'll be well served from their professional input.
Fantastic.
Eric, do you have any comments?
I have nothing to add other than what's been presented in the packet. It speaks for itself.
May I ask a question, please?
Of course.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Commissioner James, this dialogue that occurred between Burke and Matthew Wright, was that in writing, or was that during the meeting?
That was during the meeting. There was a good conversation about the orientation and the length of the discharge pipe, the concern over velocity, head pressure, all those things, all those concerns that had been raised. There was a discussion between the two, and how, and you'll see that reflected in their future designs. Matt Wright was, came back.
And, excuse me, Commissioner James, who was present at that meeting, please?
At that meeting, I think they said it was Shabika was not there. It was Matt Wright of Red Barn. It was Thomas Burke, or Christopher Burke, Scott Ferris of Lakota, Costa Catulas, John Peterson, and myself.
This is
And
This
that
is
was-
the Zoom call.
that was the
versus
Zoom call
the-
Tuesday, that was the first day Costa was back amongst the living. And this first
I think
opportunity.
it's wonderful that you as a commissioner get to sit in to these meetings. As you know, this is a subject near and dear to me. And if someone could summarize, perhaps we could ask Thomas Burke to summarize his conclusion in writing, so that the board has the benefit of that.
Absolutely.
Again, I would love to participate as a commissioner in future dialogue with Mr. Wright and Mr. Burke with respect to determinants of the stormwater pipe development. It is an issue of great concern, as you know, to me. Thank you.
Great.
Okay, so noted, thanks. Okay. Feedback completed, we're moving on to 6.4.
Yep, so the Centennial Dog Beach and the temporary fence, as you know, we've removed the temporary fence completely. There have been communications with all the regulatory agencies and obviously the village. So we're back to where we were prior to putting up the temporary fence. So
Except, it's an unleashed dog park.
No.
Costa?
Just for clarity, there was correspondence between myself and Shoren Hall, who is a representative from the Army Corps of Engineers. Jim Casey from the IDNR was copied on the correspondence. The Corps at one point did open a file on this based on the request. That project number that was assigned was LRC-2023-82. Since then, I have corresponded back with him, gave him the photos, showed him what was completed, noting that everything was removed, and he did follow up with a closeout of that case file, so everybody's aware there was a file open and it has since been closed. So that project, in their eyes, has been completed and the fencing has been removed, which it has. So just for clarity.
Is that closed out from the ACE and also the IDNR?
The IDNR, I haven't had direct correspondence with that, but like I said, Jim Casey was CC'd on each one of these emails directly, so he's aware of the correspondence. I never received a letter of that. I believe just as of late, there was a letter received from the IDNR that is being responded to currently.
from Lauren Wolbe.
Yeah.
So just to confirm that we've removed the fence. So it's just another.
They're closing out all the loops,
Yeah.
if you will.
So now we're in the permit stage again, and then,
We are not in the permit stage
We're not.
at this time.
fine.
We are
Okay.
having on-leash dog park or dog beach, and then as board gives direction further to staff, we will continue down whichever avenue is addressed.
Perfect, okay. So we start. Anything else on the dog fence? Okay, perfect. 6.5, Park District response to 205 permit.
I had a nice conversation with Commissioner Rapp regarding the AECom response to our public comments for the 205 application. So that's in your packet, starting at primarily page 25 of 28, but most notably on 26 of 28, where it's in the yellow highlighted segment. And it's, I believe, Commissioner Rapp, specific to the Clean Water Act, Section 401 certification, and your question regarding that, correct?
Yes, I just wanted to register in this meeting that I personally was surprised to see that in this response, based on my review of other projects that have required public notice of the Section 401 IPA process. Before people are too, we're overstepping, I would note that in September of 2019, with respect to the Lloyd project, there was discussion about public comments received with respect to the IPA notice by a neighbor of Lloyd. And so I was surprised by that. I know that in some of these comments, the IEPA has required like an after the fact testing protocol for bacteria, because that particular part of the beach is in a recognized high bacteria and high pollutant area, so there is a little bit more stringent oversight and monitoring of it. So I just wanted to note that, whether we as a park district want to take action on it or do anything, we can certainly discuss, but as a neighbor, to the beach, prepared to invest a lot, I think that it is important that we try to make sure that it will be as clean as possible.
else like to comment?
May I ask a question
Of course.
of the executive director? Mr. Peterson, are we planning to have continuing dialogue with AECOM on these comments?
I'm happy if the board would like me to reach out to AECOM, I'm happy to reach out to them on this particular issue if you'd like me to, if the board would like me to.
Well, not only this issue, but if you will look at the top of page 3, if you'll recall, at our workshop, we heard a lot from the public that open view of the lakefront is very important to them. And I thought that Mr. Weaver's response with respect to the blocking of views was pretty weak. So I wondered if it would not be appropriate to perhaps have a meeting with him and sit down and discuss this.
I think it's a terrific suggestion. I would think that we should get our consultants engaged with AECOM to coordinate. I think the last word we got that Orchard 2020 application for 205 Sheridan was not inclined to make any changes to their permit application for the risk that, given the village has taken an interest in asserting additional regulation, that they were gonna let the status quo be. That said, if they are to proceed, I don't know the status of that permit, but I do know that if they were to proceed as proposed, we still have to coordinate in order that we can achieve our objectives of having a properly secured dog beach and a bypass. So I think the suggestion of allowing our consultants to confer, and if we can, in so doing, persuade them to perhaps take a different view of the height of the groin, I think that's a great suggestion.
Is that something that could happen by the next contemplated open house in RGT? Could a couple of those
Absolutely.
conversations take place?
I would encourage, and I was gonna suggest that you and I, as the negotiating team at Orchard 2020, make an overture to further discussion and try and then put our consultants in the room to collaborate, because we are neighbors. If he goes forward, we still have to, address what improvements he's gonna do.
I would more broadly, if I may speak, thank you. More broadly, we need to accelerate communication with Orchard 2020. Got a permit in, build this house, we have a much better idea of what we want to do on Elder Centennial. I have previously been, let's effectively slow the discussion with Orchard 2020 to figure out a little bit better what we want to do. We still have some refinements to make. Now is the time to more consistently engage our neighbor, given his progress, their progress, and our progress.
I'm all in favor.
I would agree.
I just have a question, because I know we have agendas for our negotiating team meeting. Would we expect to see agendas and notes from the consultant meetings? I mean, are they confidential? Are they an open session? Are they at workshops? I think that a little bit more thought on the parameters of that to make sure that it is sensitive and thoughtful and reflecting, transparency with the community would be important.
And you're referencing the most recent Zoom session on Tuesday, or are you referencing the January 21st session? Or?
I'm referencing conversations going forward between our consultants and Orchard
Yeah.
2020's
Okay.
consultants, because I would hate the appearance of, I think it's important that they talk, I'm fully supportive of that, but I think we need to have a few guidelines around that so that it does not look
So I
like it's
I wanted
a
to
secret
share-
negotiation session.
I would share with everyone, the Orchard 2020 plans as submitted for permit are on a board in our presentation package from January 21st. And then there's also, we superimposed our preferred arrangement next to his preferred arrangement, and obviously you don't do both, he had come back in the prior negotiation and said his permit's in, he's not intending to modify anything. I don't know the status, but I do know that if he goes forward with that, we still need to integrate to solve our problems. So that's why I think we'd be very constructive, if we can, and we understand his proposed elevation goes from 591 at the bluff to 587 at the toe. Ours goes from 587 or 585 down to 583, and that's the difference. So there is work to be done. We are neighbors, so I invite that discussion.
May I address the chair, please?
Of course.
Okay, thank you. I guess my initial question on whether we were going to have any further dialogue is really one as to whether we are going to have further communication with the IDNR in deference to the desires of what appears to be our community of preservation of view. I would think that it would be important as the contiguous owner that we reach out to the IDNR and express some concerns about the height of the 205 Sheridan Northern Breakwater. It's just a suggestion. My understanding that the agency likes to work with adjoining property owners. So I wondered if you had planned that, Mr. Peterson.
Not at this time. We had sent in our comments and received a response from AECom, and until tonight, it's the first time it's been requested of me to re-engage with the IDNR and or with AECom, so I'll take the board's direction if you want me to now contact the IDNR as a board.
I would
I would like to make a recommendation that we do so with respect to the Commissioner Rath's question on the clean water permit, and then with respect to the height of the 205 Sheridan Northern Breakwater.
I have no problem for John initiating that dialogue with the IDNR. I think it would be best for us to let them know that these are topics that we would like to discuss with, and intend to discuss with, between our consultants, so we could reach some accord.
What are your next planned conversations with the consultants, COSA and Warren and?
Sure. So our next step is once we finalize and we get approved from the board is to continue on and then go with the first engagement is to have the design charrette and kind of review of everything that's happened thus far, bring everybody back up to speed, and then continuing on through that session, working through the design criteria that's already been selected and approved per the motions from the 27th of October for Elder, and then continuing on with Centennial in regards to overall designs of what we have currently, but then foster new designs as they relate to the information that has been processed, received, and in the design from our consultants that we're hiring.
So is there room in those conversations to fold in these comments and concerns?
Timing though is of the essence.
Let's back up. You jumped to 6.6,
Yeah.
which is next on the agenda.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think that this is more to, can we have an immediate dialogue to say, hey, we want to address these topics
Correct.
in a collaborative fashion.
Is that a conversation we want to have with Porter, or we want to have with our consultants?
We want to go to the IDNR and
Yeah.
say, we are seeking to address these issues between our consultants to talk through and let you know that we're having this discussion to address these concerns. And I think that we need to accelerate those conversations because that goes into 6.6 timeline for
Yeah.
trying to bring this to resolution.
Correct.
That's what I was
These are
wondering.
not, these are design discussions principally, so that the board can opine on the design, and then there's a lot of detailed engineering work that goes from there once you lock in on the design.
So how does that fit with the timeline of a proposed March 18th open house?
The 18th open house as
Yeah.
is proposed
I know.
we'll work through that, but the concern right now, from what I'm hearing, isn't the 18th, is, because open comment has closed, the IDNR is opining on their information, what they've heard. If we need to get back to them, we need to do so now.
Got it.
So this is a matter of urgency to address the current permit that's in for 205 versus our next steps going through our process. We just want to make sure that we can work through that process with 205 and our concerns now as they have been restated and reinforced based on the conversation from this evening and how to move forward with that. So that's contact tomorrow morning.
Yeah, we can reach out to the IDNR tomorrow, let them know what the board's instructed us to do. Pretty,
What has the board instructed you to do?
to reach out to the IDNR and let them know that we want to address the clean water matter and the height of the proposed breakwater.
We already mentioned, excuse me, I apologize.
Our consultants and 205's consultants would address that in a,
Okay,
open dialogue.
we're reaching out to let them know that our work, okay,
Yeah.
thank you,
We'd like to, continue that dialogue with consultants.
thank you.
Is it clear to everyone that we're reaching out to the ICNR to let them know that our joint consultants, ours and Orchard 2020s, are going to discuss the clean water and the breakwater pipe? That's it.
And integration, that's it.
We're gonna request
We have to accomplish our,
that.
regardless, we have to accomplish our objectives for the dog
You
beach.
can't assume that it's
Right.
like.
Yeah, we're requesting it,
Right,
and we're advising the IDNR
right.
of our intent.
Just wanted to clarify that that's our scope.
Understood.
Excellent, okay.
May I please make a request
Sure.
that we follow any oral discussions with the IGNR with a written summary where we note our concerns about the 401 clean water issue and our concerns with respect to the height of the northern breakwater at 205 Sheridan. My purpose in making this suggestion is that I'm very concerned that an IDNR permit is going to be issued if the agency does not understand that the neighbor next door continues to have some concerns. So I hope that those concerns would be conveyed, as well as the effort to work collaboratively with our mutual experts. Thank you.
So noted, like, we need a note to file to document that. Okay.
6.6.
Sorry if I jumped with the timing question, but now we'll move properly 6.6, which is the Elder Centennial Resolution approach and timeline. That can be Warren. I'm guessing there's going to be participation from Costa. And I'll see that. Okay.
So, we passed 9 motions on October 27th that gave direction, specific direction on Elder, general direction in Centennial, and including ADA access in the dog beach. One of the things that we have to decide and give further direction on should be the width of the dog beach, in order that we can be responsive to the comments that we heard to advance Elder. My objective, my recommendation is that staff move forward, as we've just described, so that we have documents ready to present to the public at another open house on March 18th. So people can see the progress from October 27th, January 31st to March 18th, that we would then be able to act on that at the March 23rd board meeting, giving specific direction regarding design and permit application for Elder. We would then also consider further design input for Centennial at that time, but we would move the Centennial discussion 1 month later at the second April meeting, so that we would be able to advance the Centennial discussion regarding ADA access, the dog beach, parameters, and that would address the fence configuration and the integration with Orchard 2020. The objective being to make some decisions at that April meeting. With the design piece decided, that then pushes it from the board level to staff and consultants to go forward and work out all of the specific engineering, and then come back to us with more detailed plans.
Supportive.
So I'm gonna summarize just to make sure that everybody is on the same page and that I understood this correctly. Number one, we're going to determine the width of the dog beach in order to advance Elder.
We should have a discussion of that. I'm sorry we didn't do it
Yeah.
before, but that,
Yeah.
we should be providing some discussion and distill what we've heard from here, because without that, we can't give detailed direction. It's not critical, but we should really think hard on that one.
It's a
The elder piece, we're trying to get knocked or locked down so that we can look at it in March and
Vote on
have
it
board
March
action
23rd.
at the end of March, the March meeting.
And then on the agenda for the April meeting, we're thinking about trying to understand the pieces of the Centennial, i.e. ADA access, design elements, the fence configuration, integration of that south end.
Yep.
Okay, all right,
So
perfect.
lock in on Elder in March, lock in on Centennial ADA dog piece in April, and any further discussion of an exchange would be after that. We're not coupling these two things together. I want to make one point, and I'm sorry, David, but I want people to understand why Elder is still closed. There are gabion baskets that hold the shoreline. There are gabion blankets under the sand. Those blankets have torn apart. They have sharp wires sticking up. We don't know when the sand moves, but we do know that they're exposed wires that are like punji sticks that could injure someone if people use the beach, and we don't know if there's enough sand cover. So we need to address that. We need to get the broken concrete out of there before we can safely open the beach. We also have the village storm sewer pipe. A big chunk of that broke off last summer, washed up on shore. We don't know if that's gonna happen again, or pieces are gonna come apart. That's why Elder's closed. And it's incumbent upon us to take action so we can correct it and open it.
I was gonna, if I may speak,
Of course.
I was gonna ask one question as it relates to the Elder design. You had mentioned earlier Red Barn and Burke had some discussions. So after our experts, hired experts, there could be some design changes, tweaks to what we now know as the Elder design, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Succinctly softening the curve and extending the pipe further.
Got it.
Okay.
So at what point?
May I ask a question, please?
Sure, we have Cynthia and then we have you, is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay, go ahead, Colleen.
Certainly, thank you.
No, she yields to you, go ahead.
Oh, did I just hear Commissioner James suggest that there might be an extension of the pipe
Soft
at Elder
extend,
beyond the breakwater?
Now, all right, let me clarify. The suggestion, comments were raised regarding discharge velocity. Those comments were not necessarily of concern to Thomas Burke and his professional expertise. Scott Ferris commented on a softer curve being aesthetically more pleasing, and Matt Wright of Red Barn suggested that the pipe could curve and follow that, and then take a 90 to discharge out near the end of the break wall with appropriate protection over the pipe to provide, prevent anyone from going in it or anything else from going into it. So these were the three professionals weighing in on their suggestions based upon their comments. So I got a picture in my head. This is Matt Wright, Scott Ferris, and Thomas Burke all collaborating. But the overall scale of it hasn't changed.
But the pipe may actually extend beyond the stone in a protected capacity. Is that correct? Is that what I'm hearing?
What was discussed is that have the pipe follow the curve, and then put a 90 on it so that it ejects outward towards the lake, flush with the face of the stone. If it's flush with the face of the stone, you need a grate over it, just like you see in many other storm sewer applications, where there's a grate to prevent debris or people or things going in there. Make-
Right, thank you.
So,
Cynthia, oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, you're right. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Your comment follows Colleen, please go ahead if it's really, I'm not really good.
No, I'm gonna categorize that discussion with those consultants, it's a discussion, it's not a decision.
Right,
It's something they're looking at, so let's not get hopes up, hopes down, or sideways.
I'm just reporting what the three of them
I just want to get that.
together, there was a constructive dialogue between the three, thought it was awesome.
Yeah.
You know what, how dare you report?
So, it's a discussion, that's what these guys do for a living, that's the process for what they go through. No one should bring anything yet about what's going to be done, so, just so we're clear, or I assume, Warren, that's the takeaway you should have.
And for the record, this is what I do for a living. I facilitate these discussions between diverse professionals to find the right solution.
Okay,
Cynthia,
thank you.
I just, like, thinking about the park plan overall, I'm just wondering, like, at what point, there'll be further discussion on, is there a way to narrow the 24-foot wide path? Because, as an example, at what point do we get this discussion about some of the other park features? Like, we've talked about having a food truck parking pad. In the plans that we're looking at, there is no food truck parking pad. Like, at what point do we inject some of the other, like, park planning features that are going to, because the park is not, I know drinking water is important, I know the stormwater pipe is important, but I feel like to the up and down the street beach goer, the food truck is important. The visual walking up to the lake is important. The flood view is important. And at what point do we have those discussions, number one? And then number two, at what point do we have, like, the cost discussions of, because we've had the original estimate, where our consultants preparing more refined estimates for the design process. What I've seen presented to other boards are, here are your options, here's the cost of each option, here's what we've done to try and address some of the concerns. I mean, well, that's gone back and forth a bunch of times with the narrowing the path discussion. Like, at what point in this process do those happen? Is that the March open house? Is that before the March open house? Is that?
My expectation is by the March open house, you will have the designs that set the stage for all those things or address those things with prospective costs.
So we will have one of these lovely reports that other boards get with the options, the costs,
No, you won't.
considerations, or, I'm just.
That's a joke.
Okay, let the consultants do their work. They know the budget constraints that we put. And if you look at the Waterfront 2030 plan, you recognize it's a phased implementation with the priority given to stabilizing the shoreline, protecting the shoreline, and setting the stage for as we have the funds available to address or develop these other elements.
I'm just gonna say, as a regular beachgoer, if we don't have a place for a food truck, it's gonna be like.
I'm not saying no, I'm saying manage your expectations based upon our financial capabilities.
Okay, but after 4.5 minutes, like,
So, no.
just,
Don't know.
we hear you, I've written it down.
okay, good.
Fair enough. All right. Manners of the director. Are we finished with the conversation with 6.6? Resolution approach and timeline? Okay, perfect. Manners of the director.
Thank you, Commissioner Cloto. So just one item is we have some meeting minutes that we continue to advance, and recognizing there will be more than the normal share of meeting minutes, I'm going to start pushing those out to the commissioners well in advance of our meeting on February 23rd, so you have ample time to review them and provide comments before we get into the meeting, so that when we present them on the 23rd, they're available for immediate approval. So just wanted to let you know it's a basket full, and that's it.
question
Sure.
on the meeting minutes. Do we know when we are due for our semi-annual review of closed meeting minutes?
I'd have to go back and look at when we last did that.
Okay.
That was something that Libby Baker did for us. So she's available to contact in early March, but I'll also reverse, go backwards and see where we were.
Don't want to get out of sync.
Might be a good thing for our new colleague who joins, I believe, on the 27th, as well as Libby, who will help bring up to speed our new associate. Once Libby's available to talk with the Park District, we have to wait 60 days before we can communicate with Libby, or she can communicate with us on business matters.
Okay.
So I would suggest that's going to be addressed in first couple, maybe the first 10 or 15 days of March, but I'll note it. That's it.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
Okay, just goes back to Commissioner James on his timeline. Where in this process do we interface with the Village of Winnetka so that we are keeping them informed and also moving forward with whatever special use permits we need to secure? How is that going to occur?
I've had some communication with the Village of Winnetka, asked them to detail their permitting process. They have thus far not offered any answers to that permitting process, because as you know, they're still deliberating it. I did note that during the Lloyd discussion, there were no special reviews or permits required at Lloyd. We went through the normal building permit process for the walls and the cage, but there was no further discussion of the break walls.
My concern is that we will continue to spend tax dollars on this, and I just want to make sure that we are not throwing good tax dollars away, so that we have a clear path with our intergovernmental relations.
So I'm happy to engage with the village further, and I would invite the board's direction to do so.
Listen, I think as president, vice president, you two are to be the lead in terms of communicating with the village board as they enter this new phase of, well,
Trying to decide their authority.
yeah, their authority. So
I will comment that the IDNR makes a very clear distinction between public and private. The entire premise of the Park District's work is to provide greater public access and recreational opportunities. I have corresponded with the village trustees and invited them to review all the boards we presented on January 21st. I've also provided links to the Lakefront Master Plan, and most specifically the excerpts for Elder and Centennial that describe the thinking. And so far as special use permits, we do have special use permits for Elder and Centennial, to the best of my knowledge. Those uses that exist today are not proposing to change. We have paddleboard racks at Lloyd, and we allow swimming there. We had paddleboard racks at Elder, and we had dog beach at Centennial. We had swimming at Elder. We're proposing swimming at Centennial. None of the uses of those beaches are changing per se. We're not discussing the connection. We're only discussing the improvements at the north end of Elder and the south end of Centennial.
Point of comment, we were on agenda item number 7, and we're going backwards. Sorry,
Yes,
continue to go forward, please.
Yes.
Can't help yourself.
Okay, managers of the director, do you have any?
You're done.
Okay, perfect. Item number 8, board liaison reports.
I'm gonna go first. Is anyone else dying to know?
Yeah, no, please,
Okay.
okay.
First, I would like to talk about the caucus. The caucus is actively recruiting for new members. It is recruiting season. I know that newly slated candidates received a communication. I'm not sure that that communication went more broadly, but I would invite other and all members of the board or the community sitting out there, if you have interest or know people who might be interested or would be fantastic on the caucus, please get them in touch with Scott Myers. I think we're doing an organizing meeting later in February. We will have a new chair announced I do want to take a moment at some point, and I do want to just recognize Kristen Coulter for her phenomenal service at our meeting tonight as caucus chair, but she will also be passing the baton in this new organizing period. D36, Tuesday, February 14th, 11:30 to 12:30, they are doing beverages with the board. Instead of chats with commissioners, they are doing beverages with the board. So if anyone would like to engage directly with them, I thought that was, it's a good thing. Because
Alcoholic or non-alcoholic?
they're peds, so.
Say the date again.
February 14th, 11:30 to 12:30.
I love it.
Valentine's Day, and that will be with Emily Rose and Don Livingston. And they are advancing the master facilities plan. I will update on that separately in a second. They're doing staffing. The calendar is more solidified where students will start after Labor Day, and I know that staff are already heavily engaged in calendaring discussions. I did note deep in their documents that they are engaging in a further demographic study. So I definitely think that once that's complete, that we should and would like to get that, because I think it might be helpful for us for our strategic plan and our further planning.
Is this the demographic study that they do every year anyway for planning classrooms and class sizes, or is this in addition to for some other reason?
My impression is that it's in addition to, because they are engaging an outside consultant and it is not their normal forecasting for the. Like I've not seen a proposal like this since they did the big, it wasn't as extensive as the big demographic study,
No.
but they are engaging an external person to help with it.
They have historically done an external person, and they have historically leveraged the community to survey all the nursery schools to try and figure out the demographics. And we have been wrong by about one entire classroom every single year.
Okay, good to know.
Just so you know.
I guess-
that's how many people just move back and forth.
I think though, this one, the intent was to understand what the pandemic impact move was, because there has been a lot of exodus, there's been a big exodus of older couples with no children, and they have been replaced with families with young children, will have a baby, so I think the intent of the study is to try and understand that, right? And then they are also engaging in their policy update review in earnest. I did take the opportunity to attend their committee meeting this week on Tuesday morning, where they were presenting the schematics for Crow Island, so that was pretty exciting to see the new gym and the new classrooms and some of the layout around that. So I expect that will be bubbling to the surface when they're ready. So that was pretty exciting. I think it would be good. I mean, they referenced in the meeting ongoing discussions with the IGA, which are always ongoing. And then I do think it would be good for us to just generally circle back with them on their plans, and certainly make sure that they feel welcome to share them with us more formally when they're ready, and make sure that we're in alignment on some things. But no, it's exciting. It's exciting to see projects taking shape. So
Thank you very much. That's 2 liaison reports. Mickey?
did I get 6 minutes?
I forgot to set the timer, so
Yeah.
honestly.
It's not a liaison, it really is just a question in terms of caucus, and David, you might be well prepared to answer this question. If someone is coming off the Park District Board, is there a time restriction before they could be on caucus?
There's a gap. It might be a full year, I don't know what it is, but
There is a gap.
you
Okay.
can't go directly from the board to the caucus.
Okay.
You've
I
got to
think
wait.
Teresa Claybrook is eligible this year.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to give you.
That's what I assumed, but I thought I would ask the question. Thank you.
Has someone reached out to her to consider it?
In any case. Okay, so, any more board liaison reports? Excellent. Staff reports?
Christina, thank you. So just a few items. Paddle tennis, you might have seen that the courts are up. We're still working with utilities. Met on site today with Cross Electric. We're looking to contract with. As part of that, the threshold came in for their cost estimate a little over 17,000 and change. When we were out on site today, we talked through a couple contactors and other things to be able to put the timers on the courts themselves that were missed, unfortunately. So there's going to be a little variation with that. That does not require board approval because it's underneath the $25,000 threshold. So I just want to make sure that the board is aware. I've already talked with Director Peterson on this, so there's going to be a few items that we need to kind of move along, if you will. I know the budget hasn't been formally approved yet, but there's items that are, I believe, are not necessarily have any worry as far as not being approved, if you will. So we can continue conducting business as usual. So that's one, so we're excited to keep moving on with that. Stormwater is moving on at a great pace. The Mayo Brothers have been doing great work on site and can continue to do so. Currently, as where things have shaken out, they're ahead of schedule on a few of the smaller items. I say smaller in complexity to the entire project, but due Child's Fields and a lot of the work you might have seen that's going on the east side of the fields is wrapping up nicely. I will note, as presented by Kemper Sports, the addition to the greenside bunkers is one item that we have been investigating. And I brought this to the board's attention a little while ago, and with the proposals that we have currently and our purchasing requirements, considering that this is a capital improvement to the course and not something that's purchased by Kemper, it does require us to go through the typical bid process. And a way to try to expedite this, and the reason I'm saying to expedite this, where we're at timing with rowing and trying to get a contractor on site. Hallenbeck is a contractor that came in with the lowest bid, as we discussed previously, at $387,000. We're working with them to reduce and supply some materials by owner. The second bid was from Wadsworth at $433,000. And then Verde came in at $697,000, nearly $700,000. We would love to look at this as a potential change order to the project, because the village does have concerns with the Park District bringing on an additional contractor to the project, that there could be potential issues with some, well, it wasn't us, it was them, and finger pointing at the end due to maybe repairs for irrigation damage that might be sustained or drainage damage that might be sustained in construction. I was able to engage with the village a little bit today. They are open to the idea. They did suggest, and I think it's a great call on their part, that not only do we have to get both boards to approve this, the village council as well as our board, but they had suggested that there would be an amendment to the IGA to support this as well, because this is another piece that potentially has a large effect on the overall project, which makes sense in my eyes. And taking through and understanding what that looks like, I'm anxious to get this moving forward pretty quickly. Hallenbeck, Jeff Hallenbeck, the president of the corporation that I talked to today at length, along with some other initial conversations with the village. I would suspect that our timeline to get this in front of the board, barring any back and forth with the IGA draft of the paperwork that would be needed to that, would be early March. So right now, we're probably going to look to try to advance that as long as I got, not support, but consensus from the board to move forward with that capacity. My concern is if we don't and we delay, this potentially could delay our improvements to the course to try to open it in one fell swoop where we have all the bunkers redone, and that would be a big miss on our part. This work was initially anticipated to be done in-house with value engineering and in-house labor. Unfortunately, the labor market where it is currently and the issues that we're having with hiring have moved us to this phase, and we've been engaging through this phase as since you've heard from the budget presentation from Kemper Sports. So I just want to make sure that the park board is aware of the issue as previously addressed, and I'd like to get a consensus from the board, if you will, to continue down this path. Warren?
Questions?
Yes.
So, what's the difference between Wadsworth and Hallenbeck, price-wise?
About $50,000.
Okay.
Wadsworth
And
suggested they might not have the capacity.
you previously said
Correct.
Wadsworth doesn't have the capacity.
Correct.
Okay. You also discussed potential conflicts between GC and subs if they're disparate. So if I hear you correctly, you're saying that the Mayo would hire as change order Hellbeck, which is
Correct.
the low bidder, and they would be under their general direction to avoid any conflict and have a single source for which to go back with warranty claims and any other coordination issues.
There would be potentially an additional cost, a upcharge, if you will, because now the management of that was something that was not in DeMayo's original contract.
Understood
So
that there would
there'd be
be
a
an
small
extra fee,
percentage,
an extra
correct.
fee percentage
Right,
for the
which would be
GC
built
to manage
into
that
that
work.
work
But,
here.
so if I hear you, if I understand this correctly, you're suggesting we go with a low bidder, but we put them under the supervision of the GC so as to avoid any conflict, and Wadsworth doesn't have the capacity to get it done on time anyway. I support that move.
Yes, that summarizes it.
And just another comment for all board members is, as part of that IGA, if we slow up the project, that's on us. The financial repercussions of us putting them behind schedule or them not being able to complete would then be 100% on the part of this.
General conditions alone could be 50 grand a month. It's probably way more than that, but we'd see, so time is of the essence.
100% of the essence. So my clear recommendation is we need to move on this, or have Coastal move on this now. It needs to be done, and it's something we budgeted for, so let's do it.
Just a question on the timing, because we will have our next voting meeting later in February. Our early March meeting will be a committee meeting, so do we need to do a special meeting to approve that, like, how do
We
we?
likely will have a special board meeting for budget purposes, so we could
Okay.
evolve the committee of the whole meeting into a board meeting with a special board meeting embedded in the board meeting.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we are set to vote on it, so that's not holding us up.
How about March 18th? We do that,
How about 2 weeks from now?
March, what?
Well,
2 weeks?
it is. How about
Well, I don't know
2
if you get an
So
IGA negotiated.
Yeah, so I would suggest, based on the initial conversations, that early March is kind of when if everything plays, out, the best it can, that would probably be when we would be able to identify this. And I think the 9th makes the most sense personally, versus delaying that any further. The work won't actually take place until probably late April, early May, and they should be wrapped up by July, which is ahead of time for when the seeding's gonna happen. So I'm not worried about getting them there. What I am worried about is Hellbeck getting booked up by somebody else in the interim. That's my bigger concern.
The only thing I'm supportive, the only thing I would just remind everybody of, that this wasn't in the budget, that they made some operating expense reductions, which I don't believe included the Kemper fee in that last presentation. So I know that Jim, when I last talked to him a couple of weeks ago, was asking for updated numbers from Kemper. So I just want to make sure that we have updated numbers from a golf fund standpoint, given this, that's all.
Understood. I mean, it was presented, and, they did some swings and roundabouts on the budget that they presented at that night.
No, they did. So they reduced the operating
Right.
losses to make up for the money to spend on.
The bumpers.
No,
The bump.
not disagreements, it's like they need to come and update us, make sure we're not making.
Yeah.
Yeah, they prioritized it and they found the money in other places in the budget. Yes,
Right.
okay.
Right.
So, more discussion?
Go ahead.
No, I'm just gonna circle up.
So Coach, I think that figure from Hollaback could actually be less when we take over the sand requirements, correct?
So the number as it was presented was $387,717.11. There is a allotment for sand at unit price of $1.72 per square foot, $99,342.18. We are looking to remove that from the bid and self-perform in regards to deliver the sand, and they would use the sand. We don't pay the markup, and we get the product we want. It's a cost savings for us with very little legwork. So there would be a reduction to that. I'm looking to schedule a meeting on Thursday of next week to do a final walkthrough to make sure that 2 of his concerns that he had with the sod work around the bunkers is addressed. So Rick, the village, and I are going to plan to do a walkthrough next week, Thursday, at our construction meeting, to finalize this, and then have a sit-down with DeMayo after that meeting to make sure those 2 parties can come to terms. If they can come to terms and we can work through the IGA, we should be able to accomplish this. And in accomplishing this, that also will meet all the requirements through the bidding policy as well, because that was another avenue we looked at to make sure that we were doing everything in course with the proper action as needed.
And by Rick, you mean Rick Jacobs?
Rick Jacobson, yes,
Got
I
it.
apologize.
No, no, that's okay, just wanted to.
Sorry. Yes.
Okay. All right, I just want to take a swing around the room and make sure that everybody's in favor of this so that Costa feels like he has the authority to go forward, given the urgency of the timing, and that we did discuss this during the budgeting process. So, Colleen? She might be-
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah.
That's okay, that's what I figured, that's what I figured.
Good work.
Yeah. Does this, do you support going forward with this process, given that we discussed it during the budgeting process, and that Costa secured the bid, and that we might be able to save an additional $99,000 off of it if we do the sand ourselves? And do you feel comfortable with authorizing him to go forward? Is that,
99,000 is gonna be reduction off of that, but we also paid the cost for the sand, which we had budgeted 75 for
Oh,
the
okay.
original budget.
So there's-
Because we planned on self-performing
Yeah.
that already.
that's okay.
So that's where the 315 number came in for the budget presentation in September.
Perfect, that's very good. Okay.
Correct.
So, Colleen, do you have any questions of Costa, or are you prepared to authorize him?
No, I'm prepared to say, I think we need to move forward.
Okay. Colleen, go ahead and move forward. David?
Move forward.
Nikki?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna move forward.
Yes.
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 Okay, good. Good. There you go. Yeah, there you go. All right, thank you very much, Costa.
I did have two other items.
I was just gonna say, I have more items on your very full plate.
As the board is aware, there was a correspondence that was received from Mariani Landscaping in regards to the 205 Sheridan Road address for their submittal to the village for notification of construction for that site. I have reached out to the village to receive the plans that were submitted. I'm waiting to hear back from them to get a copy of that, and then once we have it, we can review that or distribute that to the board. The way that this reads in regards to the tree permits and protection, knowing Andrew Lewick and his work in the village, I'm sure everything is being addressed as it is, and it needs to be required by. And if there's any items of question that are, whose trees are they and where they are, they'll have to come back to the park district prior to any authorization for removals, and we'll have to review that. So just be aware, I did request those documents, and as soon as we receive them, we'll distribute them.
Does it work the same way as if you're a private homeowner and this is your next door neighbor, i.e. you could go down there and ask to inspect that permit and?
Any permit that's submitted,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
So you could go down there by yourself and ask for, and they'll have the whole thing and the forester's comment.
Yes, you can review it, but I don't know that you can take a copy with you.
You cannot take a copy.
You can review it at
cannot take-
community development.
You cannot
as far
take a
as the
screenshot,
board is
but you can review, yeah. I got a thing going on next door, so,
concerned.
but you can review it, yeah.
And then I believe we covered Elder and Centennial through the different board motions, so that's it for right now.
All right, staff reports. Kyle?
Thank you. We have spring registration beginning on Monday, the 13th. The spring brochure will be heading out the door tomorrow, I believe is the official date. I just want to thank Debbie for her work for getting all of our rec track updates ready to go for that brochure. It's a huge lift, and she does a wonderful job with that. Our summer hiring is off and running. Matt Barton and James Janescu were at job fairs today. James and Beth Dostard, our new HR manager, they were at a job fair on Tuesday, reaching out to make sure that we have as much contact with the community and surrounding communities as possible. Very excited to report that our date night has maxed out for the parent-child date night that's scheduled to be held next week at the Michigan Shores. Really excited for this iteration, especially the departure from previously held at hotels. This will be a nice change of pace, and the community has responded very positively to it. We're in the midst of IGA conversations with District 36. After having initial conversations with the group last week, very excited, very positive reactions. We will reconvene on Wednesday for some updated dialogue on that. In the process of also updating the North Shore Country Day use of the turf field and surrounding Skokie Playfield areas. Once that contract is ready for review, it'll be brought before the board. It is a substantial source of revenue for that for the turf field, and will help for the redo of the turf within the next 2 years. So we want to make sure that that is adequately and appropriately communicated. The fenced-in storage lottery down at Steppen Family Boat Launch. That lottery is scheduled to be held on Wednesday for a drawing of 1 3-year spot in the fenced-in storage area. Currently, we've sold 50 lottery tickets for that. We had a reminder sent out earlier this week, and I expect that tickets will continue to be sold until the deadline, 5 p.m. on Monday. We are working through some options for our strategic planning process, and I will reach out as soon as there are updates to be reviewed. Very excited to say that sailing will be back at Lloyd Beach this summer. That will make an appearance in the spring brochure as a call out. We're working with Sheridan Shore, that is a large name in sailing. Very excited for the opportunities that will present. They are also very excited to be working with us. Also very excited to say that the beach campout will return this summer. We have that planned right now for we have that planned currently to be held at Lloyd. That will come into fruition over the coming weeks as we take the necessary planning approach. Toby Ross is working on a number of large-scale events, most notably 4th of July and fireworks. Fireworks are being scheduled to be held this year in a slightly different capacity due to the construction in the area, but we are confident that it will be able to be held in an all-aerial display rather than a mix of aerial and lower burst fireworks, but it will be back this year. The foundation is exploring a number of different opportunities to support events and other initiatives throughout the year. One Camp, one of the hallmark initiatives of the foundation, is well underway with the planning process. We've engaged the Perspectives Charter School community for support in the student athlete leaders that help to plan it, as well as the community members that will be the campers for that. So very excited for that initiative. The ice arena and staff are moving forward with the process for selling the outdoor rink components. Once we have that process ready for review and we have a buyer selected, we are likely at this point, though not official, likely going to go to a bid process for that to ensure that it is open and accessible to all those interested. One caveat to it, it is a very complicated piece of equipment, pieces of equipment actually, and so it'll be very important that we consider that whoever the proposed purchaser is, they are able to disassemble, pack up, transport, reassemble in an appropriate manner. So we want to make sure that we are very careful with that process. Again, before we finalize the sale, it'll be brought before the board. And then finally, a bit of mixed news. The pro tournament that has historically been held at the AC Nelson and the outdoor tennis courts is not scheduled to be held this year. They're not able to get the tournament going, the organizers aren't, but Pat and staff have done a great job making the facility available, and we're ready to support it. I say it's a bit of mixed news because on the positive side, that means we can program and offer a greater degree of lessons during that time frame that was normally offered. So, we look forward to hopefully having it in the future, but in the meantime, it'll be a great opportunity for the community. And I believe that covers everything for me.
Great, thank you. Do you have a question? Go
I
ahead.
have two questions. I have one directly to Kyle and then one to family.
Okay.
Memorial Day, is that parade, is it a ceremony, is it?
We are still in this moment planning on doing a parade as usual with the memorial at the end of the parade as we've done previously.
Okay, good. Yay. And then I just wanted to ask staff and commissioners who attended the IAPD conference, how was it? Did you learn anything exciting enough to share with the rest of the board in terms of insights to move us forward? I mean, it seems so long. I feel like it seems like a lifetime ago. It probably does seem like a lifetime ago to some, but.
I'm happy to speak on it. This was my first opportunity to attend the IPRA IAPD conference. Having been to many such conferences in different arenas in my career, this was certainly one of the top. The quality of education, the quality of learning that happens there, I was impressed. Of note from that, one of the first sessions I sat in on will impact the board in the future, and we will get information and present it in a more formal manner. But there will be a creation of a local government consolidation and efficiency committee. That will be a substantial lift from the creation of that committee over the course of 18 months. There'll be a report that's expected to be released at the end of that committee. So that will be a substantial lift by the board, as well as staff and community members will be involved. And as we get further guidance from IAPD, we'll share it with the board. But there's great information all around, all the way up to the IAPD business meeting. I can let Costa speak to his experience.
Yeah, I mean, to further that point, I've had the privilege now to attend a few of those conferences for the IAPD, IPRA conference, Soaring to New Heights, and sessions are always fantastic, and it gives you a great variety of different information to choose from. Sometimes you just need a refresher, or you want to see what's going on most legal, or in regards to legal concerns. Security is one that's always interesting because there's a lot of changes for security cameras and what's protocol and what you're able to do and not able to do. I know, oddly enough, Kyle and I both attended the Distinguished Agency our presentation as well to better understand the road mapping for that, which I think kind of opened both of our eyes up a little bit better. I know we had anticipated maybe that's a late 24, 25 process, but with some of the other things to have in place prior to that, a full vision of a master plan for the Park District, the strategic plan in place, as well as some of the other things that are coming forward. That might be a little bit further down the road to get some of those other avenues up and operating to be able to be reviewed for that accreditation. But always very interesting, and I know my staff was, I had a couple of my staff members come down as well to further their expertise, and always a great opportunity and a great time for networking and to work with peers and to just understand what's going on in the industry. So.
Yeah, if I can jump in and echo what Kyle and Costa have said, and I really want to go back to Mickey's participation a couple of 3-4 years ago, and from a commissioner's perspective, and I think Commissioner Root would say the same, it is an engaging conference. And for the time that it comes back around in 2024, the commissioners at that time should participate. It's really a fantastic 2-3 day event, and you can pick and choose, as Costa said, it's almost a la carte. My participation, the one thing that I came away with was on grants and working with third-party service providers to advance some grant opportunities, so among some of the other learning opportunities. But the grant element and trying to get some funds to support our efforts and our projects, that was a nice session. So, but commissioners should go. I think Commissioner Wu would support.
May Commissioner Ruth speak?
Yes.
Okay. I would encourage all commissioners next year to block the calendar and go at least to the Friday night reception, which is a reception for commissioners. I learned more at that reception, I think, than throughout the whole conference. It is an amazing opportunity to speak to your counterparts across the state. What was particularly interesting is to see the number of park districts that had all of their teams together, and they would have breakout sessions. It was kind of neat, but it was at the Hyatt, huge facilities, and you would see, commissioners interfacing with staff. They'd be sitting around a circle and working through issues. That was pretty cool to see. The other takeaway that I had was, I know we have talked about adding a planning person to our staff. And what I walked away with is so many of these park districts, they have a 3-year plan, they have a 10-year plan, they have a capital plan, they have a strategic plan, and and not all of them are large park districts. I think we're working on it, but we're lacking there. But again, my favorite speaker was our own Steve Adams, and his address on what to do when you had a commissioner that was not cooperative. and I was grateful for that session. I want to thank our attorney. Thank you.
Thanks, Colleen.
Great. All right, any other staff reports or questions for staff?
You want me to address Colin's question?
All right, so may I have a motion to go into closed pursuant to 5 ILCS 120?
Just going back to the conference,
Yes.
with the calendar, we had our board meeting on Thursday evening, which kind of shortens the opportunity for our staff to enjoy the conference to the fullest, because we have a board meeting late in the evening. And I just think next year, when we're thinking about the calendar, we should remember that.
I think that's a great idea. Considering I gave a presentation Thursday morning and drove out here till midnight and then drove back to the hotel for a presentation Friday.
I just wanted to throw
Love
that
that
out
idea.
there, because hearing how much staff got out of the conference, I would like to just balance
Great.
that.
And I know a lot of districts actually do that.
Yeah,
They'll
Commissioner
change
Rapp
the date.
actually suggested maybe one meeting in January to help provide enough time for the conference.
We all need to remember this.
Exactly.
Now, but
Yeah, thank you.
All right, may I have a motion to go into closed session pursuant to 5 ILCS 120, section 2C1, the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body. 5 ILCS 120/section 2C5 for the purchase or lease of property. 5 ILCS 120. 2C6 for the setting of a price for sale or lease of property. And 5 ILCS 122C11 for litigation or actions pending, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent.
So moved.
Second, excellent. Any discussion? Any discussion?
Just a quick question. Do we intend to conduct business after closed session comes back in, so people don't have to hang out?
Maybe the whole meeting, so.
Yeah. No. Yes.
Is it 7:38?
Perfect. And should we take the
Yep, so sorry about that. Commissioner Archibald?
Yes.
Commissioner Watson?
Yes.
Commissioner Rapp?
Yes.
Commissioner Root?
Yes?
Commissioner Seaman?
Yes.
Commissioner Koto?
Yes.
Commissioner James?
Yes.